First of all, I'm going to call up Kenneth Richter from Friends of the Earth to give us some more information about agrofuels.
Hi, I'm Kenneth from Friends of the Earth, and I really wanted to start with thanking all those people who've been involved in campaigning against the power station designed to burn palm oil in Ealing, in Portland, and in Newport, and I think those were fantastic successes. And due to the campaigning of all the individuals and groups involved there. And it's not just me thanking you, because just last week I actually received an email from Biofuelwatch in Indonesia, which is a big NGO working against the expansion of palm oil plantations in Indonesia, and they heard about these successes, and they were wanted me to thank everyone involved here, because obviously it impacts directly onto their lives and onto their work in Indonesia. And we already know, about the massive impacts of the use of palm oil for biofuel in cars. We know about it causes massive deforestation, open burning of rainforests over there, indigenous people being thrown off their land, and actually as a result of the deforestation, there's massive emissions, climate emissions from forests, as well as from the peatland being destroyed there. So now on top of this demand for palm oil for biofuel in cars, we now have extra demand coming in for power stations which want to burn palm oil, primarily because it's the cheapest vegetable oil there, as well as it's being subsidized by the government as a renewable energy. And at the moment that might, there's not a lot of these power stations around yet, but if we want to see a bad example how it could end up, we just need to look over to Germany, which is actually where I'm from. And in Germany, Germany usually likes to paint itself as a world leader on renewable energy and on solar energy. But if you look at the figures, actually Germany produces as much electricity from solar energy as they produce from burning palm oil. And that's clearly not the path we would want to go down here in the UK. But unfortunately, due to the schizophrenic approach of this government on climate change, it's exactly where we're heading. And so what we see here, these power stations are actually financially only viable because of the subsidies they're receiving from the government as so-called renewable energy under the renewable obligation. So effectively, the government subsidizes land grabbing, biodiversity loss and deforestation in Indonesia and Malaysia. And just to give you another example how schizophrenic the government's policy is on these biofuels, recently there has been some understanding that causing deforestation actually leads to more climate emissions, and therefore isn't quite exactly what they were tending to. So they're trying to think of methods how to address these so-called emissions from indirect land use change, is what they call it. So one of the proposals they came up with, and this is you really have to think about, is they said why don't we allow these companies to use carbon offsetting? So you have to think about this. They're building a whole industry which purpose is to reduce emissions, and then when it ends up not actually reducing emissions and actually increasing them, they say, well, why don't they use carbon offsetting instead? Which is amazing. So on a more serious note, the reason why it is so important that we get it right here in the UK is that it actually has worldwide impact, because the world is watching what's happening here. And as I said earlier, while the Indonesian NGOs they watch what's happening here, it's not just the good guys who are watching us, it's also the bad guys. And in fact, the palm oil lobby is getting quite worried about the lobbying that's happening in our campaigning. And they've actually they've started quite a high-level, campaign, defamation campaign, basically, about what we're doing when we campaign against agrofuels and palm oil. And it's key to remember that the driver for this expansion of palm oil is demand that is coming from Western countries for food, but also for agrofuels, both in cars and now in power plants. So what needs to happen? Well, it's basically three things. On agrofuels and cars, we need to ensure that the government is implementing the EU Renewables Directive without increasing biofuel targets. And contrary to what they're trying to make us believe, they actually have quite a lot of freedom how they can implement the Renewables Directive. We need to stop new uses of agrofuels, and just mentioning aviation, because there's a lot of pressure now to start to have targets for biofuels in aviation. And thirdly, and most importantly, we need to reform the renewables obligation so that burning of palm oil and soya oil and other vegetable oils is no longer subsidized as so-called renewable energy under the renewables objective. Thanks a lot.